Welcome back to the LEC live from the Riot Games Arena in Berlin, Germany. I'm Dracos here, joined at the desk, and we're joined in the house by an incredible group of fans ahead of this series. Finn, Dagda, guys, this has been a short weekend so far, I'm not gonna lie. I would love to tell you it was epic. I'd love to say it was a clash of titans yesterday, but honestly, Fnatic just came out swinging.
Yeah, and it was good to see. Like, I haven't seen Fnatic look that good in a hot minute. Well, I suppose it's a bit unfair to them, but the fact that they were able to bounce back after the last time they lost to G2, it took them a couple of games to get their feet back underneath them. They looked fantastic, especially in that game 3.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it's reassuring to the fans that Fnatic still can bounce back after a final like that, because BDS is not an easy opponent. BDS has come in and they've looked good throughout the entire year, and to be able to beat them so convincingly, I think it tells a lot about Fnatic's strength.
Definitely does, and I think those decisive moments, we talked about this in the game 1, right? Probably shouldn't be as many avenues as Fnatic were able to find with that buy from Razork, the confidence in his calls. And again, you highlighted it. This is something you want to see from a team who, yes, started the playoffs by beating G2 3-2 for the first time in a long time, but then that crushing 3-0 cast some doubt. And now, I don't know, I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic about Fnatic as we head forward.
Especially seeing Humanoid kind of back on form, right? I think when we look back at playoffs, he would have like the Lucian pick would be a bit invisible on it. He looked fantastic on the Yone, and the fact that then the team was able to rally around him, playing in side lanes, you saw them like moving resources to try and help him, to get him into a position to carry. It looked like the Fnatic of old. And then Razork, that last Nidalee game, like, he deserved a pat on the back.
Yeah, not just Nidalee, also the vibe. Just finding these Q flashes on the black shield so the CC lock comes in, it was really good.
Yeah, and of course, Fnatic already into the upper final here. If G2 win today, it'll also lock Fnatic for Worlds. It'll put them both in top 3. So Fnatic, in this weird case, for this single day, pretty big G2 fans. G2, of course, going up against MDK today. And in general, one of the biggest things that I think we talked about in the pre-game yesterday that we did not get to see manifest in-game was the lack of Aurora. Very sad. All we want is someone to pick Aurora.
Circles.
Big
circles.
Bunny lady, big circles. Is it too much to ask, Finn? It's supposed to happen.
No, I had a whole presentation yesterday, but today I have hope. I have Caps, I have Broken Blade, I have Mirwin. I have 3 guys that I want to see play Aurora, and I'm looking forward to it.
I hope we're going to find it. But in the meantime, of course, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to this series. And to get a look at the G2 perspective and a more in-depth look at the summer finals, let's send it over to Goldberg, who is sitting down with Dylan Falco and Rodrigo in the Marriott Bonvoy pregame lobby.
And thank you very much, Dracos. I am joined here by Dylan and Rodrigo. Thank you so much for taking the time ahead of your series.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So ahead of your series today, I wanted to take a look at some of the clips we saw from the final. And the first clip I brought is an early game clip. And I'd love to get your analytical skills in a situation like this, because I'm sure you've voted this as well. I'm sure you've seen it live. What kind of clip are we looking at right here?
So I think this is a level 1 from one of our games, just the opening where I believe we're splitting the map for Ezreal lane. In this matchup in particular, Ezreal is actually very strong level 1, gets a lot of push, a lot of pressure. And especially with the Poppy counter pack, we kind of want to enable Ezreal to be the pressure point of the map. And I think in this clip we go for I would say a pretty optimistic dive.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. But I think this is a case where probably our overall game plan is okay. But we're just making probably what is a poor decision, at least when we went over this and reviewed it afterwards.
And it kind of ends up benefiting you because Miggy's allowed to move all the way top here. Are you ever in a situation where a dive happens, you kind of hope he dies so he gets home guard and you can cover top, or is it just a coincidental move that end up benefited BB on top side?
I mean, for sure it's not super conscious, but actually the death timers early benefited us in this situation. Was a bit of a savage. I think the early dive is for sure not optimal, but here I think Mickey recognizes the map very well and just helps BB after the disastrous bot situation, right?
Yeah, so G2 has often been known as the hope for Europe as well, also when we go to international stage. But I think a lot of fans was a bit disappointed with some of the early games. What sort of issues have you guys identified throughout playoffs now moving into season finals?
So I think first of all, we were playing against a team this series who was playing for 3 pushing lanes and getting outscaled for the entirety of the series. Obviously, like when you see plays like this that are clear misplays in the early game, this is not what we want. I also don't think it's probably what we've shown throughout the whole year. I don't think we've been doing gross misplays early for the whole year. So I think it's just about cleaning up our early game decisions, and it's not as much about the game plan. I don't even think it's much about the drafting or the team cohesion, because once it hit mid-late, it felt like we were kind of in control of the fights of the way they were going. So
Fair enough. And let's also have a look at some of the good stuff as well, because there are obviously a lot of comebacks coming through. G2's always been a late game monster. We've known you guys from the mid to late game having superior macro than other teams. What are some of the tools that you guys are utilizing to get at other teams that maybe some other teams aren't? Because in this clip, you guys are kind of feigning a dragon and then going straight top.
I mean, this one, I think we believe we had Nash. I don't remember how much long we have on it, but I think here Fnatic just see us opening on bot side with Dragon coming, so it's very natural for them to think we're just going Dragon and giving a top tower. We recognize that they're actually just trolling because we can actually just go top. We still have timer for Dragon as well, so we just kill them, and then after that, I think the game's already in a very good state for us because of our team comp and stuff, but they're just trying to get a trade that they actually cannot, and we recognize it very well.
Yeah, nice. And I think this is a state where if you're already outskilled at this point in the game, and then you have like a map losing play like this, it's going to be pretty easy for us to close out the game afterwards.
Do you think like you guys are the best team in Europe at doing this?
I think we're the best team in Europe at a lot of things. Coming back, I guess that would be the current story of the moment. We're not really looking at the game like that, right? We're trying to take a more holistic approach, I would say.
I like that. I like that. Now, I also have a quote where we can talk about a more holistic approach as well, because it felt like it had been a bit of a bounce back and forth in terms of what was actually great. You can see it here behind us. That it seemed like it was hard to figure out what really stood out as being really OP. Like, it was up to the team what they wanted to play, but it was a bit back and forth. Sometimes you wanted to play tank junglers. Sometimes you swept up to AP junglers, which never really made it so that you knew what the winning side was. Going forward, for having played season finals, having played AP junglers and the tank junglers, how are you moving forward with identifying what's actually the broken things and OP things that's standing out in the patch? Because there hasn't been too many changes outside of maybe Aurora being introduced as well.
I think there's been actually a lot of changes on this patch. I believe they nerfed the whole slew of AD mids as well as the whole slew of AP jungles. So I'm sure you saw yesterday that some of the drafts we played were quite different than what was played before. So we do a lot of work with data. We do a lot of work with kind of like strategy and theory with regards to actually make a good draft strategy. I think as coaching staff, we're not thinking it like, do we want to play tanks or do we want to play carries? I think that is a very binary way of looking at it, and I don't think that's how we look at it as a team. I think we try to create a good draft strategy. We want the interactions between our champions to be good. We want the interactions against enemy champions to be good, and we want to have kind of a clear win conditions to win the game. You have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not as clear as, okay, today you're going to play Maokai, today you're going to go Zyra. I think it's always about adapting to what enemy is also preparing against us, right? So in some situations, just obviously we can switch from playing, for example, Zyra or Maokai, but it's always going to come down to what you actually want to do and how is the draft going to look overall. As Dylan said, we are just preparing a good draft overall, so sometimes it might be an AP jungle, sometimes it might be a tank, and I think that's what makes us very strong as well, just being able to switch from time to time, as long as we end up with the final proc that which would be like a good draft.
That's very nice. Thank you so much for the insight. And G2's always been a very adaptable team. That's made them very scary. Now, we've talked a little about the past now, but now let's look ahead in today's match of the week between G2 versus MDK, delivered by Uber Eats.
This summer, G2 proved again that they are the best team in EMEA. And even though they stumbled on the road to victory, they dismantled Fnatic in the summer finals.
Fnatic just can't find a way through. The G2 reign continues.
G2 looked to be the first team to win everything domestically. 3 shields and the LEC season finals trophy. And now it looks like no one can stand in their way. MDK are coming into this series as clear underdogs, barely scraping their way into summer playoffs, only here because of their miraculous winter performance. Now it's up to Mad Lions Koi to prove that they belong in the season finals. Everything this year has led to the season finals. Will MDK be able to harness their miracle run form from summer, or will they be crushed down by G2's overwhelming momentum? G2 versus MDK. Wow, incredible voice on that particular human, whoever it is. Of course. All right, Rob, I don't know how much more time you have on this test. That's crazy how quickly you aren't allowed anymore. No. Anyway, MDK obviously are underdogs, but I think there's a little bit of a glimmer of hope, and I want to know how you guys feel about it because they've gone to boot camp. We heard from Ebai, we heard from a couple other people as well. They have gone to the South Korea of EMEA, which right now is Madrid. I'm going to change, don't hold me to that. I might change that in the future. But they've been prepping, they've been practicing. Do you guys feel the faith? Are you starting to believe a bit more?
I mean, anyone who goes to Seoul Madrid knows exactly what it's like over there. It's ruthless. But look, I mean, realistically, I am glad to see that they are putting the effort in. Like, I'm not saying that they didn't before, but to actually say, hey, look, this is our focus now. We are going to all get together. We are going to work on a lot of our problems that are stemming from that mid game and making sure that we are able to find that success. Because the early games look good. It's just about getting that mid game under control.
Yeah, and just going to a new environment and just being able to focus solely on one goal. Just maybe they can finally learn to take some siestas in the mid game again, and they can actually calm down a bit and look to think more rationally when the mid game comes around.
Something we're going to have to hope for. But of course, keeping in the trend of introducing or reintroducing our teams as we enter the season finals, MDK, a reminder of what's been good, what's been bad, things that we've been excited about. And I think one of the big things that you always like talking about, Finn, is that focus around the bottom side, specifically Alvaro and Elyoya together.
I mean, you have to remember that this in Winter Split was our second best team. They were in the finals, and I think a lot of those performances came from the back. Elyoya, Alvaro syncing up, opening fast on the map, and then looking for plays very aggressively. And I think eventually people started seeing this pattern, and they got a bit complacent. Like, I think they didn't have that well, the mid lines. But against a team like G2 that has been sloppy, has been a bit skipping steps in the mid game or early game as well, they can punish her, MDK, and I want to see them do it again today.
And I completely agree. I think Mad Lions Koi have actually been pretty solid in the early stages. Like, you look back to like BDS game 2 in the playoffs where Elyoya gets 4 kills in the early game on Talia, and they're trying to figure out how they can move into the mid game, but that's kind of where the slump has come from. And I think part of that has been like, while they've gone for a lot of this, hey, we're going to focus on the laning phase and getting Alvaro onto like a Braum counterpick and stuff like that, it oftentimes has left their drafts feeling a little frustrating in my mind because they don't have a lot of engage tools, they don't have the setup that they need then to take that strong early game and then lead into a more significant mid game. So this is where my eyes are going to be focused on to see if they start to lean back towards the Sejuanis and the Maokais and away from, well, the AP junglers that we've kind of seen start to drift out of.
Yeah, big questions as to what that boot camp has yielded for them, how they're going to adapt coming into a new meta, and if they can bring back some of the form we liked, or if it's something new. Of course, on the opposite side for G2 Esports, you might know them pretty well. And while it has been a perfect year or close to a perfect year thus far in terms of domestic achievements, there still might be a couple of things here to work on.
I mean, we're putting in a nice light here, the comeback kings of Europe. But I think if you're G2 right now, you don't really like this title. You really want to just be the kings of Europe. And we really need to see more in the early game from them, because what's happening right now is not really acceptable from a team that's supposed to be the best in our league. Especially Mickey X, I think you think, Rob.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think Mickey is, to put it maybe not so nicely, been running it a little bit, especially when you look at the early stages and specifically at that finals as well. I think he's been a bit of a problem for them when he comes to, you know, not really focusing on how the matchup should be played. We saw game 2 and game 3 where he takes the Nautilus into Leona, both times ends up getting caught out, doesn't even respect the level 2 in coming into that game 2. So I think there's a lot of problems where Mickey is giving over a lot of individual errors in the early stages of his games, but then is having great performances when it comes to the later points as well. So it kind of feels like you need to fix this early stage from Mickey, so then he can transition into positions where he is running the map well, he is understanding where he should be at positioned in different points in the game, but that early game just is such a massive issue for him.
Rob, you're very heavily focused on Mickey as the support in the support position. I think that's a good question to raise, especially after the finals. When we look back to the last 2 times these teams played that big final in winter, Finn, what was it that stood out to you? Is there something that they need to capture or focus on there?
Well, I remember in that final, Broken Blade was up 700 gold on average in that final, which is completely crazy numbers. And I want to see MDK help, especially Merwin in the draft. I want to see them pick these champions like Aurora that are really strong laners that can help Merwin bridge his team into the mid game.
Yep, something we're going to have to keep our eye on. Focus on Mickey on the bottom side of the map. Jungle support synergy always going to be a story, as well as what Merwin is going to play. Is it going to be weird? Is it going to be unique? Are they going to set him up for success? That's the big question on our mind here at the desk. Let's send it over to the casters for game 1.